the second part of our section 2.2 here, going over pie chart and Pareto chart here, using the data that we have here for the number of students from each country in a specific class. So first of all, to set up our pie chart here, got this table set up down below that we can use in general whenever we're going through and setting these up. Once again, whenever you're going through these problems in class or on a quiz or test, you'll want to go through and set up similar thing whenever you're going through these problems on your own. The table, once again, will not be already there for you for the categories. So I have the countries listed and the frequencies that we had listed up above there. And then to find that relative frequency, once again, we did that in section 2.1 as well. What we want to do is we want to go through and do our frequency, which in this case was 12. And a reminder here, we do our frequency of 12 divided by the sum of our frequencies, or in other words, what we had for the total number of people in the class there. In this particular case, we had 18. And then remember, if we divide those, the decimal that we get there is our relative frequency. In this case, it's a repeating decimal, so what we'll do is we'll go ahead and round here. We'll go out 3 decimal places is what we'll normally do here. We'll want to do the same sort of thing for each of these. So we do the frequency, in this case 3, divided by our total of 18. So we get about 0.167 whenever we divide those. 1 divided by 18, we get about 0.056. And whenever we do 2 divided by 18, we get about 0.111. We round to 3 decimal places. Make sure you are careful whenever you're rounding here. Make sure that if your last digit before the rounded one is 5 or more, that you round up. If it's less than 5, then you keep it the same. So make sure to remember those rounding rules as well. And whenever we're trying to estimate the angle that we'll have in our pie chart here, what we'd want to do is do that decimal that we just got, so in this case, the 0.667, and then multiply it, in this case, since we're dealing with a circle, that's what we're dealing with our pie chart, we'd want to multiply by 360 degrees. Because if you go all the way around a circle, you have a total of 360 degrees. So if we multiply those there, we get about 240.12 degrees. So I'm going to label up above here for our angles. Remember, these are in terms of degrees. And we do the same sort of thing for each of these. The next one, we do that 0.167 times 360, so we get about 60.12 degrees. The next one, multiplied by 360, we get about 20.16 degrees. And if we multiply the last one times 360, we get about 39.96 degrees. Once again, we're just estimating approximately where these values would be whenever we're going through and setting this up for our pie chart. So normally what you want to do is you want to start in the center first, so that way you can approximate your angles from there, and then pick a starting point. So let's say, for instance, that we start here, and you'll want to normally start with the biggest angle first. That's normally the easiest one to approximate. So if you think about it here, if we went straight down from that line, that would be 180 degrees. So remember, if you're doing 180, means you're starting and then going backwards. So for instance, if you start at one point and then you flip yourself around, 180 degrees would be straight down there. So 240 is more than that. If we went another 90 degrees, if you think about it in terms of clock, be about where the 9 is on the hand of a clock, would be 270 degrees. So we need to be in between that 180 and that 270 degrees. So we'd be down here somewhere. That would give us approximately that 240 degrees. Once again, it doesn't have to be super particular, but it should be approximately where it would be if you're doing it on your pie chart there, in terms of those angles. So this would represent for the US. And then for Italy there, we had an angle of 60.12. So normally we'd want to go to the next biggest angle, which is that one. And we want to approximate that. It's less than 90 degrees. If you're thinking of it in terms of a clock, 90 degrees would be between the 12 and the 3 if you're going around clockwise there. So it'd be less than 90 degrees. So it'd be something about like this. And that would be for Italy. And then next, biggest one was Kenya. That was about 40 degrees, so it'd be a little bit smaller. And then keep in mind the last one is 20, so that one for Kenya should be about twice as big as the one for South Africa. Again, we're just estimating here. So we'd have our Kenya here, and then we'll do SA to abbreviate South Africa since we don't have a whole lot of room there. So that's the idea for creating your pie chart. I'm sure you guys have done that sort of thing at some point in your math history before. Just a reminder there of how you can go about setting that up. And then we also needed to set up our Pareto chart. Once again, this is like a bar chart, kind of like we had to do for our histogram, except for here, instead of having quantitative data, which remember quantitative has to do with our numerical values, here we have qualitative data. Because here we're talking about different countries. So those are categories, which means we have qualitative data. But once again, we have our frequencies are going to be listed off on the left-hand side, like whenever we did our frequency histograms before. And then in this case, along the bottom here, we're going to have our different countries. And we'll want to make sure to label each of those. In this case, we're not going to have to worry about any type of break since we're not typing on quantitative values here. Just have our different categories, our qualitative data. So we have our US here, we have Italy. So again, you can definitely abbreviate these some if you want to. Just make sure that whoever is reading it, whether it's somebody else in class that's reading our problem or myself if it's a quiz or test, that we can tell what it is that you're talking about there. So once again, we can abbreviate South Africa and Kenya. Doesn't make a big difference in terms of the order here, because these are just different categories. And in this case, if you look at your frequency, the largest one we have there is 12. You can choose what scale you want to do. Just make sure that you're consistent. In this case, I'm just going to go up by ones again, since we do have these ones for Italy, South Africa, and Kenya that are quite small, so that way it's a little bit easier to label those here. So let's mark those. And make sure that, especially if your scale is going up by something other than 1, that you make sure to label what it is that you're going up by. You don't have to label necessarily all of them, just enough to set up what it is that you're using as a scale, so that way anybody reading it can know what each of those little tick marks represent there. And then looks like 12 is right up there. And jump up there since we didn't have any other ones in between, but you do need to make sure that you're still marking all of those down on your scale. So the US, that one was 12. Unlike the histogram, these bars are not going to be connected since these are not quantitative values here. They're just qualitative, different categories. Italy, we had 3. So you got up to 3, over and back down. Once again, though, each of these bars should be approximately the same width. South Africa was 1, so we go up to 1, over and back down. And Kenya is 2, so we go up to about where 2 would be, over and back down. And that would be your Pareto chart.